So you finished Persona 5 or Persona 5 Royal, and now you're kind of wondering, what should I play next? I don't know, it's a fair question, and I think a lot of people think this pretty often whenever you finish a new game that you were kind of really attached to or spend a lot of time with and everything. So today I have 5 games you should play that after you finish Persona 5 Royal. Maybe you play these games, maybe you haven't already. And notice to say this is only 5 games, so this is not all the games that you should play. There's a ton of games that you should play. Atlas has a really large library of SMT and Persona games, whether there are spin-offs or anything like that. I will only be talking about mainly mainline, maybe 1 or 2 spin-off games in the series that maybe you should play. And not all of them are Persona. There's a lot of other games like SMT that I want to talk about in this one. I'm gonna leave this one for Atlas's games, but I will also talk about another one with other games that are not Persona that you can also play as well. So let's go ahead and check this video out. So number 4, well actually number 1 is Persona 4. So Persona 4 is the one before this one come up, particularly Persona 4 Golden, which just released on PC maybe about a week or 2 ago. I am still doing that giveaway, by the way, if you guys are interested in checking that out. And Persona 4 is basically really a point of evolution into what Persona 5 has become. It has a lot of the same mechanics, it has a lot of the same interesting plot points and everything. Character development works in a very similar way, and it's a long game just like Persona 5 Royal. So if you're interested in checking that one out, I definitely feel like you should check that one. I put it on my number 1 because I feel like it is the closest to Persona 5 in a lot of different ways. When it comes to the tone of the characters or the tone of the actual story and everything like that, is very similar. It goes for a similar pacing as well. So I think overall, Persona 4 is very similar to how Persona 5 will play out. The difference in this one is this one is more of a murder mystery that focuses on the murder as a mystery, opposed to how it happens on Persona 5. And the other thing is that this story takes place on a smaller town, which is completely opposite from what Persona 5 Royal is, which is in Tokyo. Tokyo is massive, it's big, it's very colorful. Persona 4 takes place in Inaba, which is a really small town where there's maybe, a couple hundred people, I'll say maybe thousands, a couple thousand people. So there's not a lot of people in that little town, so the interactions are going to be different, but I feel like it actually comes across as more genuine because you actually talk to people. In Persona 5 Royal, for example, you talk to shadows, like not silhouettes of people. They're not really like people, like you mostly see just like silhouettes, and they're not like as detailed as the characters. Persona 4, pretty much everybody's detailed. It puts attention and focus on the small town feel and everything. It does really feel like a small town. But moving on to number 2 is Persona 3. Why do I put Persona 3 here? And it's because Persona 3 is my favorite Persona game, but also is because it's a extremely different contrast to what Persona 4 and Persona 5 are. I mentioned earlier about tone. Tone in the games is an interesting aspect of the Persona games. They all go for a specific tone, a specific color theme and everything. Persona 3 uses a blue color tone, and it is more on the, how do I say it? It's more depressing, and it has a much more different feel to it. Some people like it, some people don't, and it's an interesting concept because contrast-wise, story-wise, it is a very different kind of story. Persona 3, it takes in a different kind of place, and it's very different from what Persona 4 and 5 are. However, the mechanics are still the same when it comes to the social links or confidence, if you want to call them that. Comes to character development, still pretty good, and the story that they're trying to compare is really good too. It really goes through a lot of same kind of beats as Persona 4 and 5. However, it has a different execution, and the way that the story progresses is very different. It is really good, and I do recommend you guys to play it. However, I want to say this one, I think is not for everybody. Some people just have some issues with the tone because, again, it's very depressing. A lot of things happen, but also this game doesn't really pull any punches when it comes to like deaths and that kind of stuff. Death is the theme of this game, dying and accepting death and everything. So it's a much more different kind of game. This game helped me during my childhood as my grandparent has passed away. This really kind of helped me kind of get through his death because it literally the theme of it's just kind of accepting that people will die over time, and that is okay. It's a part of life, and that is a really interesting concept because it's not, you don't see many games actually addressing everything, something like that. So I do think that this is a very interesting, a good game. You should definitely check it out. That being said, Persona 1 and 2 are also good. You should definitely check those two out. They're just very different from Persona 3, 4, and 5 when it comes to gameplay and storytelling, because they used a different writing team and different directors, so it goes in a different direction. So I'd recommend them too as well. I'm not gonna say I'm not recommending them, but I do want to say they are very different, and you may or may not click with them because they don't match kind of what you're used to from Persona 5 Royal. Next game is Devil Survivor. So Devil Survivor is a series that came out on the DS and then remade on 3DS, just like Persona 5 Royal was, and everything. So it's a remaster enhanced version as well on the 3DS. These games are really good because they also take place in Tokyo, just like in Persona 5 Royal. The difference on Devil Survivor is that it focuses on a different aspect. It has a set of characters already made, so it's not like you're kind of like role playing as much as you're kind of in this particular scenario. In this scenario, you are a student, and when you with your friends get trapped in this city, which it was run down by demons. So the demons are attacking everybody and everything, and you guys find that you have the ability to use these demons and capture them into your device that you have there, and you can use these demons. So it's a very different concept from what the Persona series is. It's a different way that they approach their storytelling, and everything is done by a completely different team when it comes to the writing or the directing and everything like that. However, there are some similarities to Persona, particularly with Devil Survivor, because it does take place in a similar setting, but also because the characters are the similar age range and everything like that. They're all teenagers, high school students and everything, and they have that kind of ability to use these powerful beings to their advantage and kind of have that team of saving the world. Or maybe what separates Persona from the Shin Megami Tensei games is that there is no clear path, and there's no right or wrong. There is a clear distinction in what they're trying to convey, and basically you can make your choices and your decisions, and it will take the story in a completely different direction. There have a couple different endings, whether it's the chaos ending, which is kind of like the evil ending, and then you have the law ending, which is kind of like the good ending, so to speak, and then you have a neutral ending where it doesn't fall in good or bad, but it's your decision and everything like that. These games approach gameplay completely different as well. For example, Devil Survivor has a strategic RPG elements, so it's not like a turn-based RPG like Persona. It's actually more like Fire Emblem in a sense. You have your characters, and you have your things that you do and everything like that, and then within that you can also do your attacks and everything like that. It's very different, but I think it works really well for the kind of story and the kind of gameplay that they have. I do strongly recommend us to play those two games, again, in the DS or the 3DS, so they're easily accessible, and they're not very expensive if you buy them digitally. I think they were on sale recently on the 3DS store, so definitely check those out. I think that they are good games, and they are super similar to Persona in that setting again, but they're different enough to kind of give you a completely different experience. But I think it's the closest thing to Persona in Shin Megami Tensei. But next, speaking of Shin Megami Tensei, my next game is also a Shin Megami Tensei game. That's Shin Megami Tensei 4 and its sequel Apocalypse. So Shin Megami Tensei is different from other series because they focus on a modern styled RPG with modern elements of the world, which is kind of different from other series out there which focuses on more fantasy or more sci-fi. However, Shin Megami Tensei 4 kind of strayed away from that, in which it took a different setting, more fantasy-like, which there are these knights called samurai, and they're around studying and being soldiers and everything. And through different series of events, Flynn, the main character, which is also established characters opposed to a blank character that you cannot fit the shoes in. You don't name the character, he's just kind of the main character, and he has his own cast of people and everything like that. And again, very similar to fashion of the other Shin Megami Tensei games. Demons start attacking. You have the ability to control demons, and now it's your mission to kind of save the world in a sense. However, again, these games have so many options and things that you can decide to do and everything. A lot of these options take you in different paths and situations that you will ever see. For example, this one focuses a lot on traveling to other dimensions area. I don't know, it's really hard to explain without kind of you playing the game and everything, so I don't really want to get into about that. But you do get to see Tokyo. It's a post-apocalyptic Tokyo and everything like that. It does focus a lot, it has a lot of themes of the apocalypse and end of the world kind of thing and everything, but it's like after it has happened and everything, and you make your decisions as far as what you want to go from there and everything. It is a really interesting concept. I think Shin Megami Tensei has a lot of different stuff that is very different from everything else out there, and I really encourage you to play these games because again they are different enough, but there are some elements that work for you. For example, Persona 4 and Persona 3 and that had a change in direction from original Persona 1 and 2. So Persona 4 was a similar thing. I'm sorry, Shin Megami Tensei 4 was a similar thing where it kind of like changed in a different direction, but the direction is pretty good, and I like the elements that they went for and everything. It's very interesting, really, to think about. The combat is very similar to the other RPGs in Shin Megami Tensei or Persona. Really, it is turn-based like Persona, and it does have a lot of the same attacks and everything like that. Buffs and debuffs are still a thing. Pretty much all the gameplay elements are still similar or the same. The difference is Shin Megami Tensei 4 is very unforgiving for newcomers. If you don't know what you're doing and you don't know the attacks, the buffs, the attack patterns, something like that, you will have a hard time playing this game, opposed to Persona, which is much easier. It's not the case for Persona 3, by the way. Persona 3 is pretty hard, but Persona 4 and 5 are like much easier. They went for a more accessibility type. Shin Megami Tensei, unfortunately, is not very accessible for newcomers. It will grind you to the dust until you learn the mechanics, especially the buffs and debuffs, which is a very a core of gameplay of these games. So I do want to recommend you that just be aware these games are very unforgiving when it comes to when you go grinding or stuff like that. You will find elements that or enemies that are super strong that will destroy you within seconds. So with caution there, I do want to mention that. Avalanche Gaming, speaking of Shin Megami Tensei, I do want to talk about another Shin Megami Tensei game, and that is SMT3. That is Nocturne. So Nocturne, or Lucifer's Call, I think that was called in Europe. This game is what got me into Shin Megami Tensei. It's a really good story. It takes place before the apocalypse happened. And you, the main protagonist, witnesses the apocalypse. Like, you are part of that experience where the world gets destroyed. Now, rundown Tokyo is now invaded by demons, and you have a special power. Something was done to you during the apocalypse, and now you have the power to do something about what's going on in the current situation and everything. It is a very different RPG from everything that I played, including everything SMT. It takes a lot of elements from previous Megami Tensei games, but it really does implement it in a different way. Nocturne is such a different game that does things so different. I can't really go in detail without kind of really spoiling stuff, and I really don't want to spoil it because even from the beginning, everything for me was a twist, and everything that happens after that is really a big twist and surprise for me. But you do have a lot of choices. You do get to do a lot of things, and in the West, we got Devil May Cry Dante as one of the characters that we actually fight in the story. It is a really interesting, like, out there story, but I think that it is so good, and it is definitely something that I'm gonna say you should definitely play this one. Again, similar to SMT4, it does have a lot of the same elements as far as like recruiting demons and the way that you fight demons, just like in Persona or in SMT, turn-based RPG kind of thing. Focuses on buffs and debuffs, and the attacks are very similar too. So if you're interested in any of them, again, please check them out. I have one more. I know I have said 5, but I have one more that I do want to include in here, and that is Catherine, or now Catherine Full Body, which is coming out on the Switch in July the 7th. It's a really good game, and I think it's a good experience for people to kind of check out. Catherine is a really mature and different kind of game, but it was the game that it was made before Persona 5. That was the last Atlus game before Persona 5, so definitely check that experience out. It's so different from anything that Atlus has ever done. It's a puzzle exploration based game. You actually go up this tower and you're pushing blocks and pulling blocks, but at the same time it does have some of those Persona social elements where you're kind of interacting with all those other characters, the cell phone utilization where you're actually texting people and stuff like that, and you're kind of finding and uncovering this mystery as Vincent is kind of going insane in his head, and he's like having these nightmares where he's dying and constantly going up this tower and everything. It's a really twisted game, and it does focuses a lot on human interaction, human relationships. It's particularly in the romantic sense. It's not really more about like the friendship, but it's really about the romance and how things can get really messed up from one mistake to the next mistake and everything. It's a really good experience, and it does. It's just so different. It does look like Persona though. It has a lot of the same stylistic aspects of Persona 5. However, again, in a very different sense, it's a really different kind of game. But I do want to include it because one is coming out pretty soon on the Switch. It's already in the PS4, so you guys can definitely check it out. It's often on sale too, so it's also again really cool. And that is really hard game. It does have a lot of puzzles they are not just simple puzzles. They are really smart and interesting puzzles that you have to solve through and everything. But you can change the difficulty to easy and everything, just like I do, because I'm not good at these games. But I definitely see some people being really good at them and kind of enjoying their experience of that. Anyway, that is pretty much in this video here. A little bit long, but I wanted to talk about all these games. I think all of them are good, and all of them have a specific stuff that you can definitely check out and get from it, because again, all of them are really good. Anyway, that is pretty much it for today. If you're new, please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you guys next time.